Welcome to Nothing But the Truth podcast with your hosts Bob Bianchi and Dave Bruno, two lawyers talking about all sorts of things, not necessarily law, a lot about mindset. Dave, we have another awesome guest today.
Absolutely. We are welcoming Dr. Liz Nissom, PhD. She is a licensed clinical psychologist and certified school psychologist specializing in treating the whole child, addressing emotional, social, behavioral, and academic needs at home and school. With years of experience, she and her team are dedicated to providing services for ages 3 through adulthood. And Bob, I had the privilege to be alongside Dr. Liz down at the State Bar Convention in Atlantic City.
Wow.
We were on the same panel.
Great.
And we were sitting right next to each other, and we were talking about wellness, which is a huge topic both on Nothing But the Truth and within our legal community. And literally, we're just like sharing notes at the table, and we just hit it off right away. And I said, you know what? You got to come on, Dr. Liz. You got to come on because she's talking attorney wellness, but more importantly, you know, in this crazy society that we're in with the tech boom and all the distractions that come with it, I thought that she was a perfect guest for Nothing But the Truth. So welcome, Dr. Liz.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. It was such a great experience, like literally sitting right next to you during the that wellness panel at the New Jersey State Bar Association. And yeah, it was great. We were taking selfies. It was awesome.
It's always great sitting next to Dave. It's always a great experience. But doctor, let me ask you, when you say childhood, blah, 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 from, I think you said I heard three. What about 60-ish aged men who have a biological age, but yet a child mentality? What about us? Do you have anything for us here?
Of course. Of course.
By the way, all kidding aside, I say that, like, if there's things that I'm seeing now, I work with a lot of young people as an EMT. I work at the South Orange Rescue Squad, and I know you're from Livingston or in the Livingston area, you know that. And it's funny. It gives me an insight and perspective that there are some young people that are such old souls, and there are some old souls who are such young people. Talk to us about that. I didn't anticipate going here, but in truth, how do we keep that childhood spirit in us when, with so many of us, our childhood was sometimes traumatic. Sometimes mine was I was very ill, very sick. I was always disruptive in class and so on and so forth. But I feel like I have a kind of childlike mentality. Does that make sense to you?
Sit in the same boat with you, and I feel like David does too, where I think we just have a lot of energy and creativity, and there's that part of our spirit, our life that we don't really want to lose connection with, and it comes from, I feel like, giving yourself time to play, being open to your creativity and pursuing those areas of interest, and kind of not doing the same thing over and over again. But I do feel like your childhood experiences play into that, where if speaking to a lot of our backgrounds, there's been some trauma where you feel some of us have lost our childhood, right? And so we continue to pursue that childhood and those childhood experiences well into our adulthood, and you keep that young spirit. So I understand your mindset very well, and I feel like I can speak to it.
I want to do a follow-up, and I think I definitely can know that he's going to go to the younger aspects of this because there's so much there with our young people today and what they're growing up with, and I kind of heard that. But I also just want to follow up, though. I've been doing mindset stuff for decades now, right? And I'm coming on a new word. I come on these themes, and it's something that just I don't know if it's just popping into my brain, and I'm seeing it everywhere I go, both with young and old. But it may go to that resilient spirit you're talking about, and here it is. There is, to me, a growing, profound illness of a lack of curiosity. Curiosity about who you are, where you fit in, whether or not, we were just talking about it on a law case, curiosity about the facts of a case, how people do things, why people do, curiosity about your own feelings and why you have these narratives you speak about, a lack of just looking in, and what do they say that an unexamined mind is not worth living? I'm not sure who said that, but what are your thoughts on that?
So I think what you're describing, what's funny is I just wrote a blog on it, on this very topic, and for Psychology Today. I have a column there, and the title is "Let Children Be Bored Again." And I think you're speaking to something that's happening very, very much and has been going on for a while, which is our children are really scheduled, right? When you think about summer, think about the summers that we had. You would finish up school. A lot of kids did go to camp, some didn't. And those who didn't, or those even who did, would come back and you would play outside. You would just play outside. You would go and knock on your friend's door,
Yep.
see if they were home, ask, you would have to negotiate with their parent, you'd have to greet their parent, you would have to propose what you wanted to do. You would be out there. There was no adult supervision or, you know, negotiation. You were doing that all on your own. You were falling, you were scratching your knee, you were getting back up, you were coming up with what are we going to do next? Right? And I feel like a lot of our children don't know how to do that. They kind of run to the computer or their phone in those moments when they're bored, when they don't know how to fill their time. They don't know how to sit with that silence and being bored. And I feel like over time, what I've been seeing in the practice is parents want to do right by their children, and I get it, right? But what we end up doing is scheduling our children all day long. And they don't really have any control over their schedule. So as we're doing this, and their schedules are so full, and they're going from thing to thing to thing to thing, right? They get to the end of the night, and now it's like, okay, now it's time to sleep. Okay, but we haven't had a chance to wind down. We haven't had a chance to let the body and the mind quiet down. And everything is a rush. So there's a lot of emotional dysregulation. There's a lot of physical dysregulation. And we have very dysregulated children, teens, adults, young adults who don't know how to regulate. And so they're always finding that thing to quiet their brain, to distract them, to avoid, to numb, because they don't know how to take control over their calendar, their schedule, their time, and just be bored. You know, I go into restaurants now. My kids are a little bit older. They're 20, 17, and 13. But I go into restaurants now and I see like little children with screens,
Yeah.
right? And headphones. And they're not sitting at the dinner table interacting. Now, listen, I get it. Little ones can be very unpredictable. But I feel like we've kind of switched to a heavy reliance on electronics and screens where our children don't really know how to self-regulate. They don't have that awareness, that creativity that you're talking about.
Wow. You know, I'm a parent, 10 and 9 for me. So I'm right in the thick of it, you know, and neither one of my children have phones either. I mean, I personally am going to delay this as long as I possibly can. And my daughter, you know, she's one of the last ones too of the group. It's almost like you got to be, you know, having the technology to even be connected nowadays. So that's one of my fears. One of my fears is like, I know the dangers of the phone because we see it in our law practice regularly with the social media platforms and the chats and all these things. Nor do I want, you know, that to be the focal point of development. But at the same time, there is a careful balance, Doc, when it comes to inclusion, is it not? And where do we balance the two evils?
So I found that by the time our children go to middle school, right, parents are no longer creating the social plans, right? And it's no longer a play date, and now it's a hangout, and they're creating those plans, which is good, but it's happening primarily through those phones. So the kids who don't have phones
Yeah.
aren't making the plans. They're not connected. They're not on the group chats, right? You're right. It is such a delicate balance because you are putting a phone into a child's hand. They don't know how to regulate. They don't know how to balance it. And so it's going to be up to us to help them because it's such a powerful tool. It is such a powerful tool. I mean, I love it. I love what it does for me and how much I can manage with this one tool in my hand. But I also at the same time hate it because everything is right there all the time.
You know, the other thing I've seen, Doc, is, you know, in the early days when, you know, you're going out to the restaurants and the kids are, you know, young, toddlers, like that's the easiest thing to do, right? It's to give the phones or the iPads to watch Disney or, you know, Mickey Mouse's Clubhouse. But as I reflect on those days, those easy decisions back then is part of the problem of addiction and reliance. And when you give them to them early and then you're trying to, take back or retract later, I think there's where part of the problem becomes, no?
Yeah, because screens are very, very addictive, right? It's an instant dopamine hit. Hit a button and you get what you want, right? Versus a coloring book or a toy or, playing tic-tac-toe at the dinner table. And
Yeah.
listen, I get it. I had three at one point. Going out to dinner was really hard. In
Yeah.
fact, we kind of avoided it and just decided, we're going to eat it until they're a little bit older. And even now, with a 20, 17, and 13-year-old, we'll go out to breakfast or whatever, and I'll be like, phones down, please. First one who picks up their phone is going to have to pay the tip. So,
You know, I
and they don't
I,
want to.
I just
Yeah.
did something on LinkedIn on the, again, getting back to the curiosity thing and what you guys are talking about. Doc, I think when I talk to the kids today and they find it impossible, or they think it's like old man talk, when I say we were literally given $1 and said, be back by dinner, don't kill yourself. That was the instruction at least I used to get. And we would go out, but the reason I bring this up is that we were able to resolve issues. We were able to get from here to there. We were able to do things with our own intellect. And what I find, and I find myself doing it too, but I'm an adult who knows the difference between this and that, is one other experience I want to say to you. When I was a young assistant prosecutor, we had no computers. Years later, I became the prosecutor, and everyone had a computer on their desk and a phone in their hand. And the level of investigations got worse. Not better, worse. They had more data, more information, more ability to communicate, more of all of these things, but they lost that common sense and connectivity. It's happening to our young kids who don't even know the difference between the way it used to be. So is it kind of a hopeless situation that we have to learn to mitigate, or is there a way to make it a positive somehow?
I mean, technology has its benefits, right? It does bring more information to us when we need it. But I hear what you're saying. You literally sat down with a file and you went through it and you made connections and you used your brain power to say, well, this is what happens sequentially. And you wrote it down maybe on a piece of paper and or made a graph. This is what happens sequentially. So this doesn't fit in with this. So this piece is something we need to maybe gather more information about. Is that, am I following on
Yeah, I mean,
your train of thought?
and for let me just amplify. It's like when we use AI, which is unbelievable. And I, as a lawyer, and because I have life's experiences, I'm able to challenge it. And I'm sure we've all been through this thing where we say, "Wait a minute, that doesn't make sense to me." Blah blah blah. We change it, and it goes, "You're correct. You are right." I had one yesterday that said I was being too academic. No, you got the answer completely wrong. But how do our kids navigate this now when they don't have a previous thing to go back? I can go back to my common sense, my life's experiences. I can challenge AI. These kids can't do that. I worry that they're going to become part of a collective consciousness of a computer.
I think it's our job as their parents then to teach them that skill, right? AI is powerful because it finds patterns. It can give you summaries on information, but use it when you need it. But use your brain first, and then look to see if it can help you find something maybe you missed, right? But start with your brain first, because that is the most powerful. And like you said, it's not like error proof. It makes mistakes. Just because, AI said it doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah, do you feel that kids today? To me, again, I hate to sound like my father, but I say that the difference between my father's generation and mine is like this. So for those of you who are not watching the podcast, you need to go watch the podcast. And the difference between his generation and his father's generation was like this. But the difference between the kids today and their father and parents' generation is like this. The chasm is so much greater. Are we building better informationally situated children, but less emotionally and humanly not as good? I don't know if that makes sense.
When it comes to I'll come back to that emotional regulation, if that's what you mean. The emotional regulation is hard, right? They don't know how to do it. They don't know how to deal with frustration. Frustration tolerance is so low. You know, like I've said to my kids, I need to get you to build your fuse. Your fuse is too short. I don't know how to do it, and then it gets chucked across the room.
Yeah, love that.
No, let's slow down and try again. Well, I just still didn't get it. Try three more times, and if you don't get it, try another three more times, right? And just continuing to persist and try again and think about, well, it didn't work when I tried it this way. Let me take a step back. Let me think about what it is that I could be doing differently, right? Our kids are used to really quick solutions,
Yeah.
quick answers. Everything is quick, 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 quick.
I think that's kind of like what I'm talking about with the computers. Like if the computer can't answer your question for you, then the answer doesn't exist when it really does. You just need to lengthen your fuse. I like that.
I like that a lot too. That is a great concept. I think that could make sense to a lot of younger individuals. Just pivoting a little bit. This is going quick, by the way. But let's just pivot to the attorney wellness space for a moment. That's where we first met, talking about this, and what an exceptional piece you brought to the psychotherapy discussion of attorney wellness. And that's kind of one thing I fear. You know, I write regularly on my Law Life newsletter about attorney wellness, but there is a place, you know, when it's about habits and routines and mindset and all the things. But when does it become the place where intervention is required? When somebody actually needs to pick up the phone and seek help either through your team or the New Jersey Lawyers Assistance Program or the Charles Nectum and Associates through the State Bar Association. Those resources are out there, but Doc, when does it become a point where the phone needs to get picked up?
This has been my standard forever since I entered the field, which is when whatever you're feeling, burnout, anxiety, sadness, whatever it is that you're feeling, starts to interfere with your ability to function. Meaning for a student, it's interfering with my ability to go to school, or it's interfering with my ability to function in school, interfering with my ability to do my job. I can't get out of bed. I can't think. I can't finish, your legal documentation, right? Wherever you are, if you're having a hard time functioning, doing the things that you usually do, that to me is now the deciding factor of it's time to look into help.
Sure. So, I mean, that's great point. But before that point, there's the stresses and the anxieties and, lawyers are walking into hard problems of other people's lives, adversaries, judges, all the things. So let's talk about, that. And what are some of the things that we spoke about on our panel that we could share with the Nothing But the Truth audience?
Like you said, attorneys are very, very high achieving people with high standards who are going into situations daily where it's high risk, and it's the need to be creative and to find strategies, right? So what we start to see is changes in sleep, right? Sleeping, feeling so tired, feeling not motivated, having a shorter fuse, not being able to let situations that normally you could handle and get through and not be so bruised about or upset about. Now things are becoming bothersome, right? Not being able to focus, not being able to concentrate, not being able to get through tasks that normally you could. Feeling just like, why does this matter? I don't even know why I'm doing this. I'm not going to make a difference. Really starting to doubt your confidence, your ability. Feeling like what you're doing isn't making an impact. So these are things you can start to look for. You'll see with yourself, not being able to fall asleep, not being able to stay asleep, not being able to wake up in the morning, feeling tired after you've slept, right? The motivation, there's just a change where you're feeling more like not yourself, withdrawing from other people, withdrawing from family, withdrawing from relationships. Not taking care of yourself, not eating on a regular basis, not drinking enough water, or eating too much, or drinking, and giving into alcohol as a way to calm the system because you're having a hard time doing it on your own.
Yeah, so these are the things. I mean, as you're saying these things, I'm thinking about what's the solution. The opposite of what you're talking about is get sleep, hydrating, exercising, being scheduled or organized. You know, I have seen too. I mean, the two of us we're different in a sense of organization, but you know, for that attorney that is just like papers all over the place and lack of like getting to things, I've seen that as a place of stress for people. But what are some of those routines and things that you could suggest for those that are looking to improve in their self or professional life?
So I would suggest prioritizing, right? Because it can be very overwhelming. You as attorneys, you don't work on one case at a time. You're working on multiple cases at a time. So prioritizing, having a sense of what needs to get done today, tomorrow, within the next week. Who can I delegate to if you have that ability? Having a set wake up time and a set routine that you follow where there's some self-care before the day starts, whether you're reviewing your calendar and prioritizing, making sure you eat, hydrate. If you work out in the morning, making sure you're taking a walk, meditating, journaling, whatever it is you're doing, your self-care before the day begins, and having a set start time to your day and a start end time. Your work day can't go on forever and ever. You're not going to be effective. You need to be able to stop. You need to be able to stop midday, whether you're stopping to have your lunch away from your desk and taking a walk maybe, or just going and stepping outside and getting some fresh air and disconnecting from your work, your cases, the conversations. Again, having a set end time and then walking away and then prioritizing again for the next day. And then engaging in your evening routine, whether that means you're making dinner or you're having dinner with your family and doing all those things that you do in the evening without going back to work, because it can't be work, 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 work. And I understand, again, we're looking at people who are diligent. They're very determined to do the best that they can and to serve their clients. And they think about their clients or the case often, but there has to be a time where you switch that off and then engage in your world and in your life, because otherwise burnout is just going to happen so quickly.
Well, yeah, I come at these things I agree with everything you said. Not a thing I don't agree with, but I think there's also something to be said for having run an agency with hundreds of people and listened to every, I used to call it kitty boo-boo, every little who's upset and whatever. It used to be, Dave knows this, kind of miraculous to watch somebody really doing poorly, really not succeeding. You can see the depression, anxiety on their faces, and you move them to a different place in the office. And the next thing you know, they're smiling. The point I'm trying to raise here is I think there's something even more basic. When you're a professional like you are and like we are, or like a surgeon is, or a doctor that's on call, what comes with the territory is adversarialness, difficulty, people, you're dealing with everyone else's problems. But if you're not passionate about what you do and you don't love what you do, then those things are prison sentences. But if you do love what you do, you can weather and be much more resilient because you know you're making a difference. And the reason I mention this is because we have more and more people calling all the time saying, well, what exactly are the hours? And nobody's asking you to work 24 hours, but if you got a brief that's due or you're on trial, sorry, you're going to wake up in the middle of the night thinking about your cross-examination. That's part of the job. And the reason I'm saying is that I believe we've gotten to a place where we can't embrace the suck anymore, as the Marines would call it. And sometimes you've got to embrace the suck. And if you don't like the suck, you need to move on to something else. Because one person's suck is another person's joy and another person's passion. So can you talk a little bit about, I think a lot of these problems, if you were just properly matched rather than mismatched in what you're doing and what your expectations are.
I think it's important to know what the expectations are to be able to understand what's expected of you, and to be able to do that and understand that if you can't, then don't promise to do something that you can't,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as you were speaking, the thought also came to my mind when you were saying you have to love what you do. I think there's another element here. I think we're looking at a lot of empathic professionals, right? um, I'm in an empathic profession. You want to do well by you when you want to do right by your client. And I think sometimes that empathy can really lead to maybe working excessively, right? And then some people who are not as empathic or as motivated is right is then they're saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And then it's like, you're right. Are you in the right profession? Are you in the right section of the profession? And these are decisions you have to make and then be able to provide what you're saying you can provide.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can't, then other decisions have to be made.
John Paul John Paul XXIII has this thing called the Decalogue. It's the 10 simple rules of daily life. And one of them is about only today I'm going to adapt and not wish all circumstances be according to my will. And I'll do it essentially happily and joyfully. And if not, I'm going to move on to something else where adaptation is not such a to what's happening negatively is not such a bad thing. I think it's so important to bring out there because everybody wants the world to be adapted to how they view the world as opposed to how the world necessarily is or their profession.
Well, I think that there's also a generational component that you're probably referencing as well.
Right? I would never say such a thing. Yes, I do think there is.
The other thing too is, and when Bob was talking about, night times and things like that is, also the expectation of the client or the customer, right? Because the tech boom's here, as I like to say. And part of what has happened with all of this technology is that expectation of immediate response. Like, I sent you an email on Friday night or Sunday morning. I expected something in return.
Yeah.
Right? So that's there. And I just wonder what advice you could give to the professional to really establish the boundaries and help, talk to the customer or that person in a way that's not, I don't have time for you, or, in a soft and respectful way.
So I'm going to tell you, when I was a school psychologist about 2 million years ago, when the dinosaurs roamed, I literally could only access my computer when I was in my office. I could only listen to my voicemails when I was in my office. And it was during that time that we had remote access to our computers, right? And it was like frustrating as all anything. I remember thinking, like, if I could only just take this home and be able to work on it and to check my email and check my voicemails in the evening or on the weekend so I could be ready for the week. And it happened. And now I crave being able to just do my work in the space where it can be done. Because really, it was when you left the office, the only way you could get back to your stuff was when you were physically back in there, right? And a big piece that comes with that is boundaries. Yeah. Right. And that's what I speak to all day, every day, right? Setting the expectation for your client. If you're available to your client every time he or she rings your phone or sends a text or sends an email, right? If that's the standard you set, that's the expectation. But if you have the expectation of send me your email, and you may look at it on Sunday night, but then you schedule your response for 9 or 8 or 7 a.m. for Monday morning. That's communicating a very strong message. And as a people, yes, we might say, I sent you an email on Sunday, right? You could say, yes. And I reviewed it and sent you a response by Monday morning, right? We don't need to be available all the time. I say, I'm not doing brain surgery. If I was doing brain surgery, I need to be on call. I need to respond right away. But no one's bleeding in my world. In that, unless it's a crisis.
It's funny you're talking about boundaries. It reminds me, like I always said, I was just driving the other day by my grammar school, and I always look at this spot where me and this kid Bobby, he came up to me and said, "I want to get into a fight with you. He wanted to pick a fight with me," and we it into a physical altercation. And all these years later, I'm like, there it was, right there, this little boy getting into a fight, but it ended there. It was at the school property right outside, but it ended there. And when I became prosecutor and we started talking about cyber issues and whatever, the bullying never ends at the school. It's worse on these devices. And I would rather get punched in the face than with some of the negative commentary, hateful comments that are like piping literally into the kid's bedroom 24/7. I think that's even worse.
It is. It is because it's anonymous, right? If you and I are standing face to face, the things that you'll say to me to my face are very different than the things you'll say to me if you're behind your computer or your screen.
Oh, yeah.
The words that come out are far more abrasive and aggressive and hurtful than if I was looking at you straight, and I really encourage a lot of people to the person face to face. If you can't, then FaceTime. If you can't, pick up the phone, but talk to the other person. Don't do it through some way of being connected, right? Because of that anonymity, that sense of anonymity that comes up. And so now I'm going to say things I would never say to your face.
Or even when these kids gang up and they're not even anonymous and they're teasing. Look how many. I don't know statistics, and I don't mean again to be disrespectful, but I don't remember any child committing suicide or harming themselves when I was in grammar school or whatever. But these poor kids today who are being picked on, if you want to use that term, like we used to, but it never ends. But talking about that inability of the kids to protect themselves from 24/7 horrible harassment, kids ganging up on other kids. What can parents do here?
So one thing I always like to remind my very own children is be careful what you put out there, right? Images, pictures, Snapchats, TikToks, whatever it is. Just be careful what you put out there because it's an imprint. It doesn't go anywhere, right? It really monitor what you're putting out there, and don't put out too much personal, private information. If you're sad, I see a lot of kids do this. They'll put videos of themselves crying, right? They're seeking help. They're seeking attention. They want someone to ask what's wrong, right? And so I then will turn around and say, parents, reach out to your kids, connect with them. Ask them, how was your day? Is there something on your mind? Is there something you want to talk about? As opposed to reaching out and trying to gain sympathy or attention through the internet and through social media, right? So be careful what you put out there. Check your kids' social media. If you're noticing that they're putting something out there, ask them to retract it or just say, hey, I noticed you put this on there. Is everything okay? So it's very important. And I say this a lot in my blogs. Anytime there's an opportunity to speak to someone through a podcast like this, is connect to your children as often as you can. Check in. What's going on? And teenagers they'll mumble and they'll grumble, but they still want you to check in.
Dr. Liz, we're going to have you come back, if you don't mind, and do a specific segment on this whole thing, both with the kids and the parents. I'll just give you a teaser, and I want you to answer next time. When I was prosecutor and I suggested that parents, quote unquote, look at their kids' social media, I was accused of asking parents to spy on their children. So I think you just said how important it is that the parents go ahead and do that, not feel bad. Dave, great interview. Will you come back, Doc?
Of course. You guys are this is great conversation. I didn't even feel the time pass.
I know.
It has flown. She is a clinical psychologist. She has a team. So for anyone that does have any further questions or want to contact Dr. Liz, you could find her on all the platforms. She has a very visible team. And it's so great to have you as a resource as well in the community, Doc. Not only for families and people going through, but for our attorney wellness stuff and putting lawyers first in the State Bar Association. We definitely appreciate your impact and your service and your help through these very difficult issues.
All right, that's it.
Nothing but the truthpodcast.com is the place where you can see this video as well as all the other Nothing But the Truth videos. And we're also in Spotify and all the places where you can get your podcasts. Dr. Liz, it has been a pleasure. And thank you for coming on Nothing But the Truth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
We're the Bianchi Law Group, a team of former prosecutors and certified criminal trial attorneys.
But here's the thing. He put himself in a box when he said...
Relied on by CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Law and Crime, and news leaders across the country for our criminal defense expertise.
To get a search warrant, you have to have probable cause that a crime's been committed and there's evidence in a particular place.
When you need a law firm with courage, compassion, and the commitment to fight for you, call the Bianchi Law Group today.